So in celebration with our peers around the world, the United Nations designated that 2022 should be referred to as the International Year of Glass. We at Imagine Museum determined that our annual theme for 2022 would be the Glass Age, Transforming Our Future, with January's opening of Martin Blank's incredible tour de force installation with founder Trish Duggan, If a River Could Tell a Story, that has brought rave reviews to all those who have experienced this incredibly powerful work. Moving this theme forward, on April 30th, we curated our annual Call to Artists exhibition entitled Florida and Transformation, where we asked artists in our state to submit works of art that expressed through glass the influences derived from this unique state that we call home. We received over 100 entries from around the state and have close to 50 works displayed representing 37 Florida artists. It was both a difficult job to curate because of the variety of submissions, but also difficult for our judge, Larry Seabrook, the president of the AACG, to choose the top pieces for awards, as he was so impressed by the talent of the artists who work with glass residing in this state. Larry, would you like to say a couple of words about the show?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Can hear you great.
Okay. So, no, when I arrived on that Saturday, I was pretty much overwhelmed by the variety and the depth of the processes and the narratives. The narratives in particular really struck me, and it was a very difficult task to really judge the show. I mean, there was so much excellence. There were several fairly well-known artists and then a number of emerging artists that I was really quite unfamiliar with. So I tried to look at things somewhat objectively and tried to bring in sort of new people to feature. But really it was pretty overwhelming, the general depth of the work. It was a great experience, and it was a great experience meeting the artists. I didn't meet everybody, but meeting most of the artists. So I think the whole project has been very successful for Imagine. It's been very successful as something representing the International Year of Glass for sure. And it really showcases artists working in the medium of glass in Florida.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the variety of narrative and of technique was just, as you said, it had real depth. I was very impressed also. So Larry, thanks for joining us this morning. And as we move through talking with the artists, that just stay unmuted and please make your comment along the way as we show more of their work and the slides that they have sent to us. We had three top winners that we are showing today. It does not in any way say anything less about the artists who submitted and the artists who are in the show. And understanding these call to artists and how it happens, especially when you give top three people awards, it should not reflect anything less than for the others that are in the show. It's just that these three that we'll be talking today, we felt really had the expression was clear, the technique was obvious and well done, and the story that they were trying to tell transcended even the material that it was made in. So we're going to start with our third place winner, and that is Luanne Workcitch from Salt and Light Studios located in Fort Myers, Florida. Luanne has said, and I love this quote, I have a theory that all good artists are philosophers at heart. sharing our 2 cents about humanity, relationships, creation, and all things deep in our own delightfully messy way. I love that quote. And I did love your work, Luanne. And so tell us a little bit about your background and your practice.
Yeah, absolutely. I am not a traditional glass artist in terms of, have studied art and spent my career in art. My formal education is in advertising and marketing and business. I've had quite a few careers over the past 30-ish years.
Love it. Love it. We all have. Love it.
Yeah. From working in ad agencies to doing business to business marketing, Six Sigma work, process improvement using statistics, which probably is a little bit reflected in some of my detail work, to even working with an art consulting company. And I think that's probably where I became most exposed to the art world. And it became a little bit easier to access for me and to understand and to ask questions and whatnot. So that was really important part of my journey. So during all of the years that I was doing something else, if you will, I also took lots of classes. I always had a creative itch to scratch, if you will, and took classes in calligraphy and blown glass and stained glass. Kind of had a penchant for glass, but got serious about glass when I took some classes from a really wonderful artist, Robin Kittleson, who I found at an art fair. And she does this really contemporary Marini work. So that's where I started. And then, really kept on taking class from really great people like Carrie Minnick, Emma Varga, Heike Brocklau, who you have in the museum even. It's been about 7 years that I have been working with glass, and kind of what keeps me excited about it and trying new things is just playing that what if game and stretching and trying to see what new things, new ideas and concepts that I can create in glass.
Natalia, do you want to pull up Luanne's slides? And you can talk over them then.
Yep.
Luanne.
And then if you can just put it in slideshow, that'd be great. Perfect. Yep. So what I want to do today is to kind of give you a behind the scenes look at the making of the graphic series, as what I'm calling it, and Big Blue. And in order to explain how Big Blue came about, it's kind of important to take a look at what sculptures came before it, because it definitely evolved from those. So as we all know, 2020 was quite a year. That's probably a huge understatement. From coronavirus to the election to all of the turmoil in the middle of the year surrounding George Floyd, to even having murder hornets and cannibal rats. we just had a lot to deal with. And yes, it felt like our society was absolutely falling apart. We'll go to the next slide. COVID seemed to, if you can just go back just a minute, COVID seemed to set the tone for the entire year, and the world locked down pretty quickly. We were really afraid of the unknown, and there was so much information coming at us with lots of different opinions. We weren't really even sure who to believe, and we were wondering if we'd even be safe. So we had, a lot of free time as artists, too much information as consumers, and I was, even by March, just overwhelmed, it felt like, with just emotions and information. So next slide. So this is what came out of it, those feelings. I created Stop, Just Stop. And you can go to the next slide. Stop, Just Stop was the first of 3 graphic aerials that I created. There was no roadmap to make this. As far as I know, no one in glass has been doing this type of thing. So I literally took out my graph paper, sketched out the idea, and played around with dimensions. And to get the scale correct, I knew I needed to work with that dot on the bottom. And I kind of drilled into, 1-inch pieces is what I was going to work with. I thought I was going to be actually drilling them to suspend them. And I thought going smaller would just wouldn't work. So I made a life-size drawing of that dot, which is what you see on the right, and got out my colored pencils. This is pretty rudimentary here, and started laying out each layer of glass, keeping in mind that I wanted it to keep its spherical form at every angle. So that drawing actually helped me determine a lot of kind of the how-to, if you will, as I wanted to suspend it with some breathing room so it could sway and not bang into each other. The next slide, please. I knew I wanted a red exclamation point, but what you see on the left is my kiln full of a couple different reds, just to give it a little bit more depth. So that piece actually had a red transparent as well as garnet. So I cut each piece, fired them to smooth out the edges, and then that background in the right-hand side of the page you're seeing is where I drilled the holes into each one for suspension. And that inset photo is my test dot, if you will. And it's suspended. If you look really closely, it's suspended from a grill grate. So again, it's like, necessity is the mother of invention here. I would slide the filament along to get the spacing right and the shape right. And in the end, I liked the shape, but I hated all those dots. So that where I drilled through. So next slide. So on the left, what you see is what I eventually came up with. It was a more elegant solution without drilling. Again, there's not really a process to figure this out. I didn't have anybody to call or to look up on the internet. But I literally sat down and just kept stringing these things together until I figured out a way that they would all connect in a neat column and not fall out. So notching the glass was important, and then using tension to string them was also very important. Got to go back, I think, a little bit. So the last slide that you just saw was stop in its final form. And the photo on the right was just me playing around with laying on the ground and looking up at the ceiling. So again, I love graphic design, and I just thought that was a cool take on it, given the spacing. All right. So that was March going into summer. By December, I was inspired to create a sister piece. This time I wanted to make a giant yellow question mark. Again, I really didn't have a market for this. I just really wanted to do it. And maybe it was the controversy around the election and the feeling of our country being in turmoil that played into it. I'm not totally sure what drove me to do this, but in any case, I sketched out a drawing that you see on the, well, you don't see the drawing, but you see that it's scaled to life size on the right. Started firing what seemed like a million pieces of glass and dremelled them until my nerve endings were pretty much shot in my hands. And then this came up. And Natalia, if you can hover over the right side of that screen, and there should be something that, a video that will play by hovering, or if you click on the right side of that screen, there we go. This shows the piece, how the viewer interacts with it. When I was designing it, I realized that I could not only make a question mark, but I could turn it into an exclamation point by the point of view. So that's why it's called, Why Don't You See Things Like I Do? So in light of all the political issues and division that totally erupted during this time, the name is a commentary on how two people can be staring at the same object and see completely different things if they, or even we, we're open enough just to take a couple steps to the left or right, we might understand another's point of view. So that's a total commentary plate piece.
Love it. Love it.
Thank you. So Big Blue, which is being recognized, and I appreciate that, was created as the third graphic aerial in early 2021. The color seemed an obvious next choice as I had a primary color theme going, but I really wanted to dive into the color blue and see what people associate it with. So that's where it connected with me. So it has a lot of connotations, as everybody knows. It's, if you are sad, but most are tremendously positive ideas like trust, calm, reliability, balance, serenity. These came screaming out at me. And in my mind, they're completely necessary for society to function well. So you had the stop, just stop with all the chaos. And you had the, can't we get along, please, with the question mark. And now blue, Big Blue was let's take a breath and reground ourselves. And if you extrapolate the blue color even to the foundational nature of the natural world, it's even more powerful. When you think about the sky and the water, especially as it pertains to Florida, all this was integral to our existence, all needing to be in balance and all so fragile at times. So that was kind of the thought around Big Blue. I completed her in mid-March, and that narrative that you're seeing now was part of my submission to this exhibition.
I had no idea what to expect when seeing it just in a slide, because it's hard to appreciate the scale of it and what was the denseness and the achievement of getting it totally three-dimensional. But once that they were hung, I do believe that they transcend as intended. And we'll see moving forward as we bring tours through. We'll get some more feedback to share with you as how do other people see these pieces. But so you did all of that work yourself, though, all of those
Totally.
wires and
Yeah.
all of those little squares, and yes, and your fingers are still here, right?
Still here. My nerve endings are
nimble
repaired.
and-
Yeah. No, yeah, it was really fun. And even the canopy, I mean, I had to figure out, working with
Yes.
how do you suspend this and what material can hold that kind of weight, and
Just the weight
Yeah.
issue also, yeah.
Yeah.
Really just fantastic and so creative, innovative, and I'm happy that you have the work in the museum. I think people should
Thank
see
you.
it, and I hope they also are moved by what it is that you're trying to express. Really, really strong. So I'm going to move on, and thank you, Luanne.
Thank you.
Our second place winner was Luisa Mesa, a Miami-based Cuban-American artist who completed her BFA from Florida International University, where she concentrated on photography and painting. Her intuitive sensibility creates this otherworldly atmosphere that brings you in almost as if in a dream and captures your imagination to indulge, reflect, and transcend into the world she has created. So Luisa, describe your journey and how and when did you begin incorporating glass into your work?
Okay, hi everybody. My journey was not always art. Actually, art is a second career for me. I was in the business world, like I like to say, in my past life. And then I went back to school, and that's when I graduated from FIU. But I was always artistic, and I started with photography. That was like my first love. And then from there, I went back to school, and I took all kinds of different courses, such as figure drawing, painting, mixed media, mold making, everything. The only thing I really didn't explore is glass.
Hmm.
So I began, while at FIU, my concentration was mainly in painting, and I loved the human form and the human face, and that's what I was doing. And then I found this intricate way of drawing that I kind of stumbled upon. I just started doing it and kept doing it, and that translated into paper. I started doing, there were drawings on paper, and then I took that to wood panels. And then somehow my photography came back. I had a vintage album, a family album of photographs. I was born in Cuba, and my family is mainly from Spain and Cuba. And so Cuba is like a big question mark to me because I never lived there. I came here when I was a year and a half old. So I grew up in Florida, grew up in Miami. And so Cuba was an enigma, and I think that's what led me to use those vintage images of my family, because it was a way to explore my roots and explore my origins, if you will. And that's what took me to start using images. They're family images, and I started putting them on pieces of wood. Underneath the images, I would do my drawing, which is basically what I still do. I draw and I layer, and then on top of the drawings, these particular collaged images that I began doing were with transparencies, because I wanted the drawing to come through. I didn't want it to be opaque and cover the drawing. I wanted the drawing to be beneath the images. And so I started using them, and then in order to integrate everything, I used resin. What led me after that, after I did these collaged images on wood surfaces, I began doing them digitally, because I like different media, and I have a basic to medium knowledge of Photoshop. So I started creating these collaged images with the drawings in Photoshop, but I started using a method that would actually, I would start drawing on paper and I would scan, and then I would put everything together in digitally, and then the final piece would be a digital piece. What brought me to glass was looking for depth and dimension. And at first, I really didn't know what I was doing. I started drawing, and I tried using, these are my initial images on paper, my drawings on paper. This is kind of what happens underneath all my work. All my work begins with a drawing. These are on paper as well. And I use inks. And to me, they're like a meditation. This is a mandala, which was kind of the point of departure for my circular images. I use a lot of circles in my work. This was a collaged image. It was a huge image. This piece is in a collection, and it's a 24 by 60 inch piece. And if you can, what I was trying to explain earlier, you can see the drawing underneath it, and then the transparency. And then I create the dresses. It's part of my Worlds Imagined series, where I imagine what all these people would look like or act like in a different world, in a different setting. And so this is actually this is a photograph of mine. The background is a photograph of mine, and the characters, if you will, are family members, and the drawing is always there, my drawing, which goes beneath the layering. And now here is one of the first pieces I created on glass. I don't fire, not yet anyway, but I will. This piece, I use a background. I work on both sides of the glass. I use inks on the back. And sometimes I draw on top of the ink on the back, and then I use drawing on the front to create dimension. This particular piece was done in that way. This is a large piece. It's about 22 inches, and it was done in the same way. This is transparent. I did not use inks here except for the circle in the middle. It's a piece created with drawing on the back and on the front, such as this piece as well. And here I had not yet used images as the ones that are in the show. I had not used images on glass yet. This was my trajectory until I used images on glass, such as the ones that are in the exhibition in Florida and Transformation. So this is another piece that I created on glass. I like to use vibrant colors. I believe it's mainly because of my roots, and also because Florida is full of color. The ocean and everything that surrounds us is bright and colorful. This is another one of my layered pieces. This is a piece I did recently, and I think it pretty much is the same color as one of the ones in the show. And
so then was it, so I noticed some black and white. Okay, so there you see the full.
this
So you
is
have some.
one of my installations. I usually create installations that go in different spaces. They're versatile because it doesn't matter what the space looks like, they adapt. And this is one of them.
Great. So you were saying then, okay, so yes.
So
Now that
this is a sister piece for the two that are in the show. This found a home, so that's why I did not submit it. And it's also family member, as is this one. This is one of the ones that are in the show.
So you were working on the patterns and the drawing on the front and the back, and then and then you had your photography and you were doing something else on the wood. So how did it happen that you determined now to put the figure into these particular pieces? They're beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, it was kind of a natural, organic evolution, if you will. I was doing it on wood, but it didn't quite have the same dimension or depth. And then one day it occurred to me, I'm going to do this on glass. And again, I printed the image on acetate on a transparency, and I placed it on the glass in the background, and then I drew on the front. And I create these garments or dresses with my drawings. And so that's how it evolved onto glass.
It's to hear that the images are really from your family photo album.
They are.
There is a real sense of nostalgia or haunting, that these images come up within the environments that you create for them. So it really is quite striking as you approach them and want to really understand, who is this woman and what is this woman's story. So did you look into your family history more, or were you aware of it?
I was aware. I've been very much aware of my family history, and I don't know, I guess I'm gonna say who they are, Why not? The lady on the left, the Act One, she's my maternal grandmother.
Oh, wonderful.
And the lady on the right is my mother. And I've used her over and over. She passed away when she was very young. So that kind of left a huge gaping hole. So I've used her image over and over. I think it was a way of probably exploring her further, the time that I didn't get to spend with her. I was 22 when my mom passed. And so it's kind of like both a tribute and a way of connecting with her, which is probably the reason I've thought about it. And then the only reason I can come up with is a way of connecting with her. And so, yeah, so.
They really have a strong emotional impact.
I think
So whether we really knew your story or not, I think that they draw you in just by their presentation. It invites, I think your grandmother and your mother invite their story into other people's lives. So I think you're very successful with
Thank you.
So congratulations on that.
Can I say one word? I mean,
Absolutely.
I think that, both for Luisa and for Luanne, I think sharing your personal commentary as well as your social narrative has really made these works much more special to me. I read a little bit about both of you, but hearing the depth of your personal convictions and social commentary really bring this work to life. And I really encourage you to grow with it.
Thank you.
Just keep going. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Larry. And finally, the artist selected for the top prize, Rob Stern. So Rob, your cumulative journey of travel and teaching and making has exposed you to the top artists working with glass today. So talk to us a bit about your practice on the East Coast of Florida, your insights, and what has kept you going for these last 30 years as you've worked with glass?
Sure. Well, first I'd like to thank everybody, Larry, of course, and Jane, and especially Christian and his crew for helping me create this piece, which, frankly, is a little obtrusive in the show. I mean, it's really having that central location and being able to do something so kind of extravagant was a real honor. And so, indeed, the things that you mentioned have all played a part in arriving at this level and at this kind of juncture with the work and the piece. And so much of what I do is a byproduct of working with other people. And that is my team with many of the folks that I have been fortunate enough to study with over my long career, and those particular places and people and experiences have influenced this work directly. There is a personal anecdote in the piece that comes from my experiences stargazing with my father in the Everglades as a youngster. He was an avid star enthusiast, and that kind of combined with some of my experiences. I'm a seafarer, a sailor, a diver, a surfer, and so you get this combination between the heavens and the oceans in a way with this piece and with this image. So that developed from a lot of those different elements in my life. But yeah, I mean, honestly, so much of what I do is a reflection of the experiences that I have. And I might note that I spent a couple of years in the Czech Republic working and training in the factories. And one of their primary techniques for creating work is mold blowing glass. And so that, as a young person and making molds and blowing repetitive molds and shapes, eventually led me to this sort of technique of using multiples and repeated to then working with John Lewis Glass in Oakland, creating furniture, large-scale cast glass, and doing very complex cold working processes. Combine the fabrication elements with those mold blown pieces. And then one more name I'd like to point out is Renee Rubichek, who was a great mentor of mine, who is now long gone, but was an early pioneer in Czech blown glass sculpture, a co-student with Lubinsky, and of that period of time with this really incredible expressive quality that these artists had from working behind what was the Iron Curtain. And so we're bringing up the slideshow, I'll actually access or show an example of some of that work. In the first slide, go ahead. Well, clearly Miami is where I live, and these are special kind of light that happens there is part of what I've brought to the piece. And go ahead. Next slide. So here you can, I'm sorry, back one slide. Yeah, here you can just see kind of the underlying sort of current of nature and my experience in the work, but also of this kind of city life and the architecture that influences this geometric quality. So it's a little bit of a combination between nature and the geometry, this kind of tessellation or fractalization in nature that is the common kind of denominator in a lot of the work. And then, of course, I'm taking things sort of from my everyday life and processing them through that lens in a way. So the wind stars are kind of a product of that. But here's another kind of example of a recent body of work of these stilettos. And this, of course, was influenced by my wife's shoe collection. But there is this also geometric quality where these shoes were all created from one metal geometric mold that I made and then elaborated on to make different iterations for a series. But this is the way that I tend to work on series. Next. So the wind stars came from, as I said, some influences, but it was really a process of figuring out how to have a fluid feeling within these rather geometric and static parts. And so eventually I figured out a way to generate this image and elaborate on it by different variations of it as were. And so that's an ongoing kind of signature series. Go ahead. And here you can see the different variations. Utilizing the glass for its glassiness, both in its moldability and in its fluid kind of amorphous quality, is a real sweet spot for me. And then also in its transparency, as you see within the slides, in all three of them actually. And then of course the light, which we've brought to this particular grouping, is done with an LED technology that has the capability of changing the colors. So in this way, you can dim it down and have it go through different cycles and stuff like this, which is kind of an exciting, part of it in terms of, the Miami kind of nightlife. Clearly, obviously, neon has always been a big part of Miami, and so
that relates to that. But here, you just see a couple of pictures of sort of creating them. And then this also here is a picture on the left of me working together with Peter Novotny, who is, my mentor and master, who led me to kind of a style of working. Go ahead. And so actually recently, a couple months ago, I was fortunate enough to go and create this first sort of chandelier in a museum in the Czech Republic. Working together with the Czech team and the techniques of the molding, we were able to create this first iteration in just 7 days. So it's just amazing to be able to, create something with this sort of scale and integrity based on the type of teamwork and really age-old system that they have in place in the factories in the Czech Republic. And here's just a short video as you'll see it go through the kind of sequence of lighting capability. And so, of course, having done this kind of first piece like that, I was very interested in how we might grow that idea. And so I took it upon me to take the opportunity of having this central location and working with Christian and his team to realize this new constellation, as it is, in the Imagine Museum.
Nice.
Next slide. Right, and then as you can see, here we are creating the piece, which I might add took several days to do. And so as we're sorting it out, it sort of takes on a life of its own. And then we've also utilized this dichroic glass in the piece to give it this kind of ethereal or, very dazzling quality. And so the piece has so many different capable sort of, possibilities. And I think that's what excites me the most about this series, about this piece, and really about the Imagine Museum. And I'd like to just finally just say that all of the artists who showed up, and I'm sure many who maybe didn't make it into the show, are just, it's such an honor to be associated with them all. And we're all a big movement and a team, and we're just getting ready tomorrow to embark on our finally returning to the Glass Art Society in Tacoma and bringing our club back together. And we're also excited. And I just finished by saying, the Imagine Museum and what the staff and the vision for that place is really what gives us the energy and the platform to grow our art. And I just, pay homage to Trish and her vision and everybody who's fortunate enough to be able to take part in the Imagine. Looking forward to great things there.
Well, thanks, Rob. We enjoy having your work in the museum now as well, and it will be up, as you all know, until the end of October, early November. I know there's a date, don't know exactly what that is, but people all summer and through the early fall will be able to experience it all. As we get into the final stretch of our conversation with the three artists, I'm just wondering if there's any questions out there from our audience today for any of the three artists that we have featured. So if so, you can unmute yourself and chime in, or write it in if you want to do that. As we're waiting for questions, I do want to remind our Florida residents who are tuning in today that during this month of May, admissions for all Florida residents to Imagine Museum is only $10. So if you are looking for something to do in the next couple of weeks, I urge you to come out to Imagine Museum and to see this incredible show and the other works that we have throughout the museum. And also, if you if you are with your family, now that school is getting out, we also do have special tours on the weekends for families. This is a must-do. It's a lot of fun, whether you just have the little ones or not so little. Our tours are really designed to engage and inform you about contemporary glass, as well as it is fun for all those who participate. So I see that there are a couple of questions in chat. Natalia?
Yeah, there is a question, where is Rob creates his work?
Right. So I have a studio in the Wynwood Arts District in Miami, which is downtown Miami. And we've been there for 25 years. So we've watched that. It's an incredible international kind of arts district evolve. And I've been quite fortunate to be influenced by not only the art of Miami and the glass art of Florida, but by it's an incredible graffiti center that has kind of been extremely influential, working alongside these muralists.
Fantastic. And was there another question, Natalia?
No, this is just a comment from Marlene that we don't have questions.
Okay.
But we've
All
got
right.
several comments on Facebook that everybody loves the work.
Okay, great, great. Well, I wanted to thank all of you. Larry, any last words from you now that you have the three artists on this Zoom before we sign off?
Keep up the great work, and hopefully our paths will meet in the near future. Yeah.
We actually have another question. I'm sorry, Larry, from Catherine, the same person who asked about the Miami studio. What is the name of the Wynwood studio?
Yeah, so that's Rob Stern Art Glass Inc. And it is at 24th and North Miami Avenue. You can look us up, info at Rob Stern Art Glass or robsternartglass.com. Come see it.
Great. Well, it's truly been a joy to, actually, I didn't know all three of you at all. So it was a real joy to get to know you better and to know more about your practice and what you're creating. And I'm with Larry. I say keep up the good work. Keep Imagine Museum informed and on what you're doing. We do have a great future ahead of us as well, as I'm sure all of you do. So thank you for joining us today. And again, a reminder, if you live in Florida, now is the time to come to Imagine Museum. And thank you so much for everyone being today, and we'll see you the next time. So long.